Thank you for having me.
Of course, anytime. Thank you for being available.
Mi gente.
I see you. It's me. It's me. It's me, Shell, bitch.
Mi gente, welcome back to another week of the It's Me Shell podcast. And remember, my job is to make your road to Friday a lot easier.
So, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where in the world you are, mi gente. I hope you had an amazing start to your week. And as always, thank you for tuning in and sharing your Monday blues with me. This week, we have an amazing guest. He's a writer, an ESL teacher abroad, and a size 13 shoe. And it'll make sense later on, I promise. And I it sounds so weird when you start off like that. So, welcome, Phil, the Blerd Explorer.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for joining me. I know it's really early over there. I really appreciate you and your time. So thank you.
I don't know. Thank you for saying yes.
Oh, of course. Listen, I like interviewing authors and writers because your creativity is very different than the normal thing I see every single day.
Right.
And every author I've interviewed has had different experiences and just different things they write about. So I really enjoy it. So thank you so much. Now, let's see. I usually start with an icebreaker. This
Sure.
week, we're talking to Phil, better known as the Blerd Explorer, about his life as an ESL teacher in South Korea. And he's also the author of 2 travel guides titled The Black Traveler's Guide to, and I might say this wrong, is it Incheon?
Incheon, Incheon.
Incheon.
Yeah.
Okay, and The Black Traveler's Guide to, I'm going to say this wrong too, Deagu?
No, that's right. You got it. You got that one.
Oh, all right. And there's a 3rd book on the way, but I don't want to tell any secrets
Yeah.
that you talk
No, that
a
was
little
okay.
bit.
I can say it. I'm making a travel. I'm doing a Black Travel's Guide for South Korea as a country, for the country of South Korea. The 3rd book. It's my biggest project I ever worked on. I've been on this for like 2 years now.
Wow.
We'll say about 2 years to count right now.
Really? And what do you do? Is it just like you kind of explore and you write things that you see and interpret in your own way, or is it just basically
It's a
for
little bit of both. Mixture of that. So, reason I can, and then I mentioned in the book before why I call it the Black Travelers Guide. It's well, anybody's welcome to read it. Of course, it's really for many Black and brown folk who travel overseas because our experience is going to be completely different compared to the generic white person's travel experience. Like they can pick up and read it, but when it comes to travel, like especially when you go to Asia, like many parts of Asia where it's very homogenous, like 98% of the population looks the same, right? And of course, anybody who looks different is going to get stared at. And there's no difference in South Korea. And the reason I kind of focus on Black travel, particularly from an African American standpoint, is because most African Americans, growing up, most of us never knew anybody who traveled lived overseas that wasn't if they did because they're in the military.
Right.
And that was like from what the 60s, 70s up to like say like the mid 2010s. Like I never seen or ever heard Black travelers living overseas. If I did, it's because they were in the military, and that's it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I've heard the same. But so you've been living in South Korea since 2016. Where are you originally from?
I live in South Carolina.
Oh, wow. Do you still have family in South Carolina?
I still do.
Okay. Was it a big change for you? I'm sure it was like a culture shock going from South Carolina all the way to South Korea.
Of course. I mean, you're going from a diverse place like USA to South Korea, where you're like, where at least in USA you got a little bit of one of everything, different nationalities, you might, right? Compared to South Korea, it's like, nah, literally everyone, 98, 99% population is like all the same, up and down, left and right.
Wow. So you are definitely an anomaly out there. You always stand out.
Of course.
So I kind of get the feeling from reading the guides that you or your books that you always wanted to travel abroad, and teaching kind of created the opportunity for you. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, that's about right. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I wanted to ask you about your name. Where did the name Blerd come from? And I know it means the black nerd, but where did that
Okay.
come from?
It's kind of a rebranding actually. My first initial content creation was called the Minority Traveler. That was my first name.
Got it.
But then later on, I'm like, okay, maybe let's try to try to get bigger and bigger. It's like around like 2018, 2019. That's why I said, okay, let's do a little rebranding, like new name, right? And I thought, okay, what's things I could buy, Uh, obviously the gaming,
Right.
um, gaming, anime, travel, food, and it's like, why not go by Blerd, like Black Nerd? So that's where I came from, Blerd Explorer.
Right. Well, ooh, I really do like that because when I read it, I was like, blurred, that's very interesting. I wonder what it meant. And then I kind of associate it with, well, you're a writer. So I was like, oh, maybe it's like a blurb, but like a spin on that. When I actually read on your Instagram what it was, I'm like, oh, that's so
Yeah.
creative. That makes a lot of sense. Especially after reading the books, I'm like, okay, I definitely see, like the culture that you're into or what you like to do. I was like, okay, this totally makes sense. So I wanted to ask, in both your books, you expressed that you get a lot of like stares, and you spoke about photographs. Like I think you
Yeah.
were like at a Pokemon tournament, and to me, Pokemon is so versatile. Everybody knows
Yeah.
about it. It's all around the world. So I wanted to ask, like, as your experience as an American or as an African American man in Asia, how has
Yeah.
it been for you?
It's been different, definitely unique. Now, as I mentioned before, because I'm black, I do get stared at. Now, in Korea, it depends on what city I'm in. Like if I'm in the capital Seoul, right? If I do get stared at, it's because I'm tall. Because Seoul, there's a lot more black brown people over there. There's more diversity in Seoul, right? It's different cultures, right? Whereas if it goes like medium or other cities, like outside the major cities, right? It's because I'm black and tall. Because a lot of times, and I want people, I stress it in the book, and I stress it with my travel stories because so because I know some black travelers, they're afraid to come to Asia because they're afraid they'll be looked at like a zoo animal, which is understandable. I tell them like, hey, listen, keep in mind, you're going to a population where like where everybody like 99% population looks the same, and they really don't really interact with foreigners. And if they do, it's usually because it's going to be a white person almost always. And so like from ESL standpoint, most Koreans they never really had a non-white English teacher. Like it's going to be rare, especially where I'm at. I'm in rural Korea, so I'm probably the first non-white English teacher that my school's had. So
Wow. Okay. Well, one of my friends, he was in a program where he was able to also teach abroad, but he was more like in the South American countries. So for him, it
yeah,
was, it was a little easier for him to kind of acclimate because he was, I believe he's Puerto Rican. So, he knows the language.
right,
So it's easier for him to acclimate. I commend you because that's such a big change. I wish. I mean, you definitely changed my mind. It's on my bucket list at this point, but it's
yeah,
just a big change. So I completely understand what you mean. And traveling while black or brown, you get the stares, the murmurs, the look of confusion from others,
yeah,
but the line in your first book where you said, when you're traveling to Asia in general, you said you're an ambassador for every black person because Koreans don't interact with people that look like us on a daily basis.
yeah,
So it's extremely important for us to kind of stay in our lane because they only know what they know about us, like social media or whatever we're being
right,
portrayed as. So I think that's very important because many people just go to different countries, just want to get lit and want to do all these things without understanding that
yeah.
a sort of level of respect. So, did you ever find yourself in the beginning stages of living in Korea or South Korea kind of coming out of character or just being a little too, I guess, American in a sense for them?
Um, I think more. I think they're more surprised, especially some of my students who like again like when he saw me because I've been mostly focused on elementary. That's my thing, elementary school students, right? So for them it's like, holy crap, we got a black guy for a teacher. It's like first it's saw me as tall, and then it's like, oh, it's like, yo, guys. They're like, when they go home, talk about, it's like, mom, dad, I got a black teacher, or something like that. So the facts. But again, it's like, and I had kids wondering like, why does my skin tone, why am I so dark, or why is my hair like this? And it's easy to get, feel like they're being racist, but at the same time, it's like, okay, they're young. Like I could let elementary kids slide when they get those type of questions because again, they're young. You can always educate them about that, right?
Right.
And if you were with children, right, it's like those are the type of questions children will always ask, right? So it's like, okay, I can't really be mad at them, but we can always educate them, learn how to be better, right?
Right.
Now it's really the everybody else who's like teenagers, adults, Korean adults who lose their minds, who at that same point is like, okay, no, y'all too damn old out like this. Calm down. I can let the grandmas and the elderly folk pass because come on, look, going reaching the 70s, 80s, 90s, and they're seeing a black person first time might cause a heart attack. So I can say that too.
So you talk about food throughout the
Mm.
guide. And you also warn us a lot about cross contaminations and if you have food allergies. Have you ever experienced like a food allergy, or are you even allergic to anything?
No, thankfully, no, I'm not allergic to anything though. Yeah, I do mention that a lot because I think when people do end up traveling overseas, especially Asia, right? Most people don't really think about the foods they're going to eat because again, some people think that I think when it comes to travel in general, some people are used to thinking, oh, if it works for my home country this way, this can be fine the same way when I go overseas. Like, nah. Every country's going to be different customs, cultures, or rules, right? And the reason I keep pulling this out because, especially for me, Black Americans who probably never traveled overseas, they aren't aware that food allergies aren't as common over here compared to USA, right? And many of the common food allergies like peanuts, tree nuts, garlic, eggs, wheat, shellfish, seafood, those are very common ingredients in many Asian dishes. So it's like, so this let people know, hey, this is the type of food ingredients you're gonna get. Even if you tell the staff in perfect fluent Korean that you can't eat this, even as somebody who worked in I was a dishwasher before, I can tell you from a restaurant perspective, even if you tell the staff, there's still a high chance of cross contamination in the restaurant. Like
Wow.
let's put it this way, it's much easier to find a Korean who's lactose intolerant than find somebody who has food allergies.
Oh, okay. I mean, because they've been there their whole life, so I'm sure, genetically they can eat whatever
Yeah.
it is that they eat out there, they're fine with.
Some students was going to make some desserts as a reward for some classes. I had to double check, and some students, like 5 over like 70 students, like it was the first time I ever heard about students who have food allergies. Because I just never heard about it because it's just not as common, so it's not taken as seriously in Korea compared to say USA and the UK if you have food allergies. So if you have those type of things, definitely avoid street food. And if you really have like severe shellfish, seafood allergies, just get Airbnb and cook them there because you're gonna have a hard time here.
Got it. Now, do you consider yourself, like, a foodie? Because I know you talk about like the many different
Yeah.
foods. So
Yes.
yeah.
That's why I struggle to lose weight here. Especially it's not helping when Korea has its own fried chicken and beer festival.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what's that?
Oh yeah, I mentioned the Deagu book. It's called the Deagu Chimmick Festival. It's a fried chicken and beer festival. About a week-long festival take place in July. It actually made a comeback back in July 2022 because 2020, 2021 got canceled, right? Because of the what.
Mhm.
So it made a massive comeback, and I had to go back and there because I'm added to my next book, and it was a great time. Tons of Korean fried chicken styles of their versions chicken. Sometimes you'll find other Korean snacks and other goodies, and of course lots of cheap beers and drinks.
Nice. So I know you mentioned in one of your books that you didn't drink, and I think it was the first one. So are
Yeah.
you drink now, or are you still
Well,
like?
I'm more like a casual drink. Like I rarely drink. If I'm good with the fellas, once on a blue moon, have a beer or two, why not? Sure, but on the regular, no. I just never seen the appeal of just drinking or trying to get drunk, trying to get hammered. I just never seen the appeal to that.
Yeah, no, there isn't much of an appeal to it. Did you have to get accustomed to like flavors, seasonings, or even sizes? Because I know everything over there is kind of like for either big
Mm.
groups or couples. Did you have to get used to the portion sizes over there?
I would say the American size portions is like a family size portion, like because meaning in Korean culture, it's about sharing the meal. So there's gonna be some dishes that you want to try, but you just can't because you can't go by yourself. Because some restaurants, some dishes, you can't eat there by yourself. Now, some
Oh,
places it depends on the location, of course. Some say, okay, you can eat here, but you got to pay for two. You know,
gotcha.
so usually it's like that. So I can't. And I mentioned my next book too, like how there's some places where um, you might be able to eat by yourself to some like Korean diner style restaurants you can go to by yourself and get a cheap good meal, or other dishes like you can't go by yourself unless you get it delivered to your hotel or whatnot.
Right. Okay.
And another thing I also add when it comes to food, that if you're a vegetarian or vegan, you're gonna have a bit of a hard time here because we might find some vegan restaurants in Seoul, but it's just not as common like over in Korea, especially pork. If you can't eat pork because of religious health reasons, that's a little bit easier to dodge compared to for vegans and vegetarians.
I used to work with this doctor who did the like endoscopic ultrasound meetings over in Seoul. So I would always have to like book his tickets and stuff. And every time he would come back, he would talk about how great of a time he had. So my question is, because I know you've been to Seoul before. Have you lived in Seoul before, or have you just
No, I have not. I've just traveled there. I would not want to live in Seoul. The closest I lived in was in Incheon, where my first book came from. That's the closest I've ever lived towards Seoul, and I really don't want to live there. Like Seoul for me, I think other YouTubers like in Korea would talk about. We kind of agree like Seoul's a great place to visit for the weekend for holidays, but to live there, nah, I don't want that.
Right. But that's why I wanted to ask, because every time
Yeah.
my doctor would come back, he would kind of say the same thing, like, it's a great place to be there. We had conference there. It's amazing. He's like, but I wouldn't want to go there all the time or live there or
Yeah.
spend
Yeah,
large
same.
amounts there.
Same. Like even for me right now, back in October, I went to Seoul like almost three for every 3 weekends for the past 3 weekends. So now November and December this month, I'm actually going to go back to Seoul for the first time for a few weeks, because like you said, one, the air quality is horrendous, especially during the winter. Korea's air quality is not the best, especially in the wintertime.
Okay.
Also crowded, very expensive too. And I noticed that for Koreans, like Seoul Koreans tend to be a little bit more ruder and a little bit more stressed out compared to other parts of Korea.
Mhm.
And yeah, and that's just for me. Like I just want to have a good time living there. Now there's some people foreigners who have to stay in Seoul and nothing else, right? Which is fine, your preference. But for me, if you really want the best Korean experience, don't go to Seoul. Like I mean, you can still go to Seoul if you're sending out an attempt to do that, but if you really want the best Korean experience, there are other great cities you can go to that are much cheaper and you still have a great time.
Gotcha. So in I'm trying my best.
Yeah.
The guide to Incheon.
Incheon, yes, Incheon. It's okay.
Okay. I know there were a lot of restrictions when that's where, your first book came
Yeah.
from. You were writing it in the
Yeah.
midst of what. Or have these restrictions been lifted? Or because everybody has like their own rules and regulations when it comes to,
Right.
are parks open again? Are you able to explore a little more now?
Yes. So both two books. Reason. At the time, you probably noticed. I wrote in this at the time when during the what. So the restrictions are really hard to do certain activities or events. And as the time went on, as I wrote my next book, the restrictions started getting a bit eased up. Like back in May of this year, around this like the second week of May, that's when like we had like 4-day weekend period. That's when the Korean government said, okay, they lifted the outdoor mask mandates, so like you don't have to wear a mask outdoors at the time. And it's still kind of there. You still have to wear your mask indoors for public transportation and whatnot. And that's when I went to the city of Jeonju, which is in the southwest part of Korea, which is a very beautiful city. Highly recommend it. And that's actually going to be my next book too. And then I believe at the time I'm recording this episode right now, I believe the Korean government said they're going to lift the indoor mask mandates for next year, starting next year.
Oh, okay. So they are moving just a little slower,
Yeah.
because out
Just
here,
a little bit,
yeah.
Yeah. Now, at the time, of course, during the 2020, 21, like you had to have the QR code. That was mandatory, and of course, that I got vaccinated by choice. I chose to get vaccinated myself though, which I'm glad I did, because actually I ended up contacted in back in April.
Yeah.
So, but thankfully nothing serious. So, but I managed to get through.
And that's what I was going to say. That's why I'm grateful I also got the injection or the vaccine, because it wasn't as bad as it would be if you didn't have it.
Yeah.
So I'm very grateful for that. How did you fully recovered from it, or do you still have remnants of certain things?
No, I'm one of the few people who didn't have any like post conditions. I only had like headache, lack of energy, and drowsiness, but no coughing or sneezing. I had no respiratory issues, thankfully.
Good.
Yeah. So I still don't know how I managed contact with it, but it did happen though. But yeah, we did also like, especially last year was bad when we had like I was in Seoul and Gangnam particularly. There were anti-vaccine protesters going on, and like those crazy vaccine conspirator folks, they were everywhere. And I'm like, oh god, I had to make a TikTok video about that because people were spreading tons of misinformation too. I'm like, oh god, this is bad.
That's crazy. It happens everywhere. Same thing
Yeah.
happens. Well, I'm sure as you've read and heard, same thing happens
Mhm.
here. Everybody just has misinformation. They spread it like wildfire, and people always think it's conspiracy theories and all this stuff. Meanwhile, people like you and I who have been inoculated actually got COVID, and we're like, well, you know what? It wasn't as bad as it was. It's a real thing. It wasn't as bad, but it's a real thing. You
Yeah.
definitely get sick. So I always find that interesting. You have people out there who are like, no, don't do this. They're trying to control you and X, Y, and Z, whatever it is that they say.
That kept me alive. And of course, I'm more concerned about my kids too. Like, okay, I spread this to the kids at lunchtime and stuff like that. But which I'm pretty sure I got it from one of them, but not on purpose, of course. But or maybe it was. I don't know.
That's usually the case though when you work with kids. They give you
Yeah. Exactly, especially true. Like you work with kids, like, and honestly, like I know, I think next school year we're going to start doing the mask mandates for classes. But even then, I'm still going to wear a mask while I'm teaching because, if you work, like you said, if you work with kids, anybody that's worked with kids could probably tell you almost every year I got sick from a kid.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter. Right. It doesn't matter. It could be a pink eye, it can be a cold, it can be a sinus infection, whatever it is that they have for some reason, they just love to pass it on. And if you work directly with them, you're gonna get something.
Yeah. And I would say last 2021, I didn't get any flu. I didn't had no flus or cough in the season, nothing. No, mine went to flus and nothing last year because I was wearing a mask, thankfully.
Gotcha. Well, okay, so I usually have this segment where I put my guests on the spot. So it's time. This is definitely very redundant, especially for you. You're a teacher, so once you hear this title, you're gonna be like, okay, girl. So it's time for my redundant fiery seat of heat because it's fiery, it's hot, and we're sitting. So why not? And I'm just gonna ask you a couple of questions, and you can answer them. Whatever first thing comes to mind, whatever you want to do. So, question number one: have you dated while in Korea?
No, I have not.
No? Okay. Question number two. If you had an opportunity to move to any other continent, because right now you're in Asia, where would it be and why?
Ooh, I'm a tie between South America or Europe.
Okay. All right. Why? Is it just the weather or just to experience new things or?
The experience new things, also definitely learn more Spanish and also Portuguese because of Brazil. And of course, if I ever wanted like to visit, be closer to home, whatnot, then I could do that. But yeah, just want to change the pace. But of course, in terms of ESL, it kind of takes reason I'll go there or Europe because I guess salary reason always isn't the highest compared to like say in Asia.
Right.
No, I'll admit, salary wise, it hasn't. Inflation has still has not kept up with inflation salary wise, but I still technically will make a lot more compared to say in South America or Colombia, for example.
Okay. All right. So you mentioned really hot weather, particularly in Daegu.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
what do you do when it gets to the 102-degree weather?
Well, it doesn't get that high. Now with Daegu, it's because it's location, it's located in a basin, right? So all that heat gets trapped up in the city. So if it gets too hot, do not go outside. I mean, I know you want to go outside, but for health wise, safety, be careful, reduce your indoor limitation. Especially I would not recommend hiking in very hot weathers of Korea because it gets brutal.
Oh my goodness. I can barely deal with 90-degree weather.
Yeah.
I can't imagine 102-degree weather.
It's great. I mean, Korean hiking, especially outdoors, you love outdoors and hiking, like it's beautiful, especially in the summer if you get the clear skies. That's why I say around late April, May is usually the best good sweet spot. Because usually around the time it's gonna be mostly clear skies throughout the week, clear sunny skies, little to no rain, and usually before it gets too hot.
Okay. You mentioned big cult problem in
Uh,
South Korea. Have you ever been approached by anyone who's just like, hey, you want to join our church or you want to do this? Have you ever been approached to join?
mm, yeah, no, probably, but I think they were Mormons though. But
Okay.
anyway, but yeah, for those of those, yeah, like South Korea really, if you're a Christian and you think about traveling to a church in Korea, I wouldn't do it. I would not do it because South Korea does have a massive cult problem. Like, yeah, even Koreans know, like, yeah, there's some churches, there are some valid churches, but it's really hard to know who's a valid church and who's a cult because you think the small cute church might be a good spot, right? But no, it could be under this web of network, this network of a massive cult, and you not know it until it's too late.
Wow.
Yeah, and even Koreans know, like the churches, they have a massive cult problem. Like even they know it. Um, in some cases, I believe for some Korea, I think Vice they did an episode on that one of the churches too. Like you check it out, like Vice South Korea cult churches. Like it's crazy.
Wow, that's interesting. All right, so last question. If you had to write a traveler's guide to your life, right?
Mm-hmm.
What would be the title? What would be the title of your life's guide?
The Blerd Traveler's Guide to What the Hell Just Happened.
Right. I like that. I like that because mine would just be very simple. Mine would be titled like Michelle's series of unfortunate events because
There
it wouldn't be like as gloomy as it sounds, but it's good enough for like marketing. Unfortunate
we go.
events. That's just what happens. Well, you did it. You reached the end of the fiery seat of heat, and you did very well. So thank you for answering all those questions. I appreciate it. So before we end, I wanted you to let us know what you're working on, what's in store for you for your future, whether it's more books, more writing, all that stuff.
Right now, taking a bit of hiatus working on the book, but as you heard throughout the book, I'm actually making a Black Trousers Guide for South Korea. There's gonna be about a total of excuse me, about 16 cities in Korea for you to explore that's in the book. Uh, Now, I remember one of them is Jeonju. Some of the other places in the southwest part of Korea, southeast too as well. And of course, Seoul. I'm doing Busan. I'm gonna spend some starting next year. We spend a lot of time in Busan working on that book as well. And of course, I'm going just traveling for the first time in a few years to Thailand very soon.
Oh wow, that's
Thailand,
great.
Cambodia. So yeah, I'm very excited for that trip to coming up soon. But yeah, so if you're still interested, the Black Trails Guide to South Korea will be available by late spring, early summer 2023.
Oh, amazing. And I'll make sure to put all those links and of course just send them
Yeah,
over
that's not ready yet. The pre-order's not there yet because I'm still gotta work on the manuscript and stuff. But
you got
once it becomes available, I will post. You'll see me post it all the time, blast it on social media. But yeah, but if you're still interested to want to get a taste of what I did, check out the Black Charles Guide to Incheon, Incheon, and the Black Charles Guide to Daegu, Daegu. It's on Amazon right now in ebook format.
Yep. And I will definitely make sure I post all those links so people can support. I think it's amazing. Good luck to you. I really enjoyed reading the books. It was an eye opener because when you think of traveling, I feel
Yeah,
most of us think of cliche touristy places. But
yeah,
after reading both the books, you've definitely opened my eyes and opened the gate to my little noggin. So South Korea has definitely made it to my bucket list. So I thank you for that.
yeah, no problem. Just keep in mind when it comes to travel, everyone's travel story is going to be different. It was when it comes to travel, no two experiences, everybody's travel experience is going to be the same. Not just with Korea, but with any country really. Some
Right.
people have a great time, some will have a bad time, some will have a racist horrible experience, others may not have that same experience. Everyone's going to be different.
Yeah, absolutely. So sadly, we've reached the end of the It's Me Shell podcast with our awesome guest, Phil, the Blerd Explorer. But before we go, I have to give you an opportunity to shout yourself out, your social media. How can people follow, subscribe, or just, harass you with South Korean questions? How do people
Yeah.
do?
You can find me on Instagram and TikTok at the Blerd Explorer. That's where you can find me right now.
That is awesome. It's amazing. I'll make sure to post all the links to your book and again, all your social media platforms. It'll all be on the description. So make sure everyone shows some love, support, and make sure you follow your girl on Instagram at itsmi.chelle. Click that link in my bio. It'll connect you to all my podcast platforms and to YouTube. So Yeah, with that said, peace and love. We out.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, anytime.
I see you. It's me. 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 Shell.